The feminist ideology is based on the notion that American women are oppressed and mistreated, that we live in a patriarchal, male-dominated society that has been unfair to women, that maybe women have been treated like blacks in this country, which is all absolute, total nonsense.
It is my high honor and distinct privilege to introduce to you the President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump.
Thank you, Mike.
"2020, the perfect year for those silly New Year's Eve glasses. And for feminism, it should have been a celebratory time. In 2018, the most women in American history were elected to Congress, and this year, the first woman of color, Kamala Harris, was named a candidate for vice president. What could possibly stop feminism? Oh, these guys, the patriarchal choir and the words of the great divider, Donald Trump. Negative rhetoric of anti-feminist is nothing new.
How the hell did she win? This woman is crazy. She's a horrible woman who hates our country.
In the late 1800s, the first wave of anti-feminism perfected the anti-equality playbook with name-calling and accusations faulting women for the destruction of home and society. And it has been passed on by American white patriarchal society for over 100 years. The first wave of anti-feminism started in the late 1800s as a counter-movement to the demand of women's suffrage. Voting equality was considered the most radical thing that has ever been introduced in this country. As the demand for the women's vote spread across the country, to discourage the quest for equality, anti-feminists designed the anti-woman, a visual of a female devoid of femininity who was bent on the destruction of the family order. It wasn't just men who were anti-feminist. Some women were convinced that suffrage was a delusion that would destroy the family. But the demand for suffrage became massive and nationwide. Negro women were invited also, but only if they marched in the back of the line. As support for the women's vote grew, anti-feminists became more violent, and women went to jail for peacefully protesting. In November of 1917, during a peaceful protest outside the White House, 35 women were arrested and tortured by police and jailers. Women were denied counsel, and Lucy Burns, one of the prisoners, was left overnight, hung with her hands over her head, shackled to her cell door. In late November, a judge concluded the women were illegally sent to jail and they were released. Their arrest, however, created outrage that made the demand for the women's vote even stronger. However, the outrage was only for white women. In the South, black women were still captured by white mobs and lynched. As the 19th Amendment for women's suffrage came close to ratification in 1923, states like Mississippi would not sign on if voting rights included the Negro woman. Soon, Cotton states finally gave in because officials were confident that methods of suppression were sufficient to keep the black woman and the black man from voting. These suppression techniques against black voters continued for 42 more years. It took a bloody Sunday in Selma, Alabama, for things to change.
Your orders to disperse, go home, or go to your church.
After the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was signed, voter suppression was outlawed and the black woman achieved a peaceful right to vote. However, in 2020, white male-dominated society continues to disenfranchise voters. The Equal Rights Amendment was first proposed by feminists in 1922 with the radical idea, no men, no women, just human beings. But the male-run government wasn't having any of that. The amendment failed ratification in 1923 and has failed every proposal since. However, in 1972, there was a little glimmer of hope. Large groups of feminists marched on Washington and protested in their hometowns. The reality was, the number of women in the workforce doubled from 1920 to 1970, and for many of those women, it was a necessity. And what did these women find? It wasn't equality.
I think that younger women, people who are more closer to my age, who are just now coming out into the job market, are being radically awakened to the great discrimination that goes on. I think especially the things that affect us now, such as equal pay for equal work and salary differentials based merely on sex as opposed to job status or the type of job you do.
Enter the spokesman for the second wave of anti-feminism, Phyllis Schlafly, who toured the media circuit with the antiquated ideals from the early 1900s.
Can we just find out where this audience is? The women's movement is anti-family and, in the long term, a destructive influence on our society. How many agree?
The donations from male conservatives to Phyllis Schlafly's anti-feminist roadshow waged a powerful campaign to stop the Equal Rights Amendment. And the conservative goal? To keep women and young girls at home in the suburbs.
Now, I think all of these careers are open to women, but you're telling our young women a very false thing if you teach them that, that anything else is preferable to being in the home.
By the early 1980s, time ran out for the ERA to be ratified, and it still hangs in the balance and is still proposed every session of Congress. Phyllis continued her fight against equality for the rest of her life. During his presidential campaign in 2016, Donald Trump spoke at Phyllis's funeral.
Phyllis, who is rejoined with her late husband, Fred, is looking down on us right now, and I'm sure that she's telling us to keep up the fight. No doubt about it. Phyllis, we love you. We miss you.
Trump learned a very important technique from Phyllis: how to scare the crap out of white women in the suburbs.
You know, they were destroying our suburbs. You know that, right?
As anti-feminism moved into the 1980s and 1990s, feminism promoted the empowerment of women and worked to include minorities, gays, and lesbians. However, faulting women with all sorts of nefarious deeds became very profitable for white men. Anti-feminist radio host Rush Limbaugh created the everlasting label feminazi to describe feminists and proclaimed,
"Feminism was established so as to allow unattractive women easier access to the mainstream society."
Conservative reporters faulted feminism for stealing the rights of motherhood away from working women. However, name-calling and accusations did not stop feminism.
But we took the good parts of the second wave of feminism and took what we liked and added to it and tried to enhance it. And we want to make the third wave movement of feminism very inclusive of everybody.
As the quest for equality became more diverse, accusations became more bizarre and widespread. Hours after the 9/11 attacks, anti-feminist Jerry Falwell appeared on television and went on the attack.
The abortionists have got to bear some burden for this because God will not be mocked, and when we destroy 40 million little innocent babies, we make God mad. I really believe that the pagans and the abortionists and the feminists and the gays and the lesbians who are actively trying to make that an alternative lifestyle, the ACLU, People for the American Way, all of them who tried to secularize America, I point the finger in their face and say, you helped this happen.
Falwell was later forced to apologize. Moving into the mid-2000s, feminist empowerment was strong, and continued to create equality for America's diverse population. More single mothers graduated from college, and women came together to fight for equality for all. The power of feminism also brought women together to fight against male sexual aggression with the social media hashtag #MeToo. As a result of the '.Me Too movement, rich and famous perpetrators were arrested and convicted of heinous crimes against females. Actor Bill Cosby was sentenced to 3 to 5 years, and movie producer Harvey Weinstein was sentenced to 23 years for rape. To counteract the #MeToo movement, the internet exploded with anti-feminist hashtags and social media hate groups. And some of these groups advocate for the violence against women and mass murder. Rush Limbaugh's feminazi also became a hashtag favorite for communications of online anti-feminists.
Shut up and sit down.
In the past few years, as more women won elections, knocking white men out of the U.S. Capitol, patriarchal control needed to create a savior that would stop feminism. And that savior? Reality TV host Donald Trump. Trump's illusion of a macho, successful playboy with multiple girlfriends, marriages and divorces, and money to spend made him the great white hope for the fifth wave of anti-feminism. After his election, his majority white male Senate blocked the Violence Against Women's Act, along with other protections for women. But what really solidified the fifth wave of anti-feminism in America was Trump's 2020 State of the Union address. On February 4th, while the world was watching the spread of the deadly coronavirus, Trump decided to celebrate anti-feminism in all its glory and awarded the highest civilian honor to one of the top anti-feminists in the country, Rush Limbaugh.
In recognition of all that you have done for our nation, the millions of people a day that you speak to and that you inspire, and all of the incredible work that you have done for charity, I am proud to announce tonight that you will be receiving our country's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Yes, the man who is famous for saying feminist or unattractive women and created the term feminazi was awarded the highest honor in America. However, anti-feminism can't stop the power of a woman. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, did not accept the president's anti-feminist rhetoric and reduced his words to nothing more than ripped up garbage. As Trump promoted his anti-feminist agenda, he downplayed the severity of the COVID-19 virus, and hundreds of thousands of Americans died. America erupted in protest against the murders of African Americans, and Americans came together demanding equality and the elimination of racism. While many Americans thought inequalities would disappear with time, 2020's fifth wave of anti-feminism produced the realization that it would take many more peaceful protests and many more bloody Sundays. Feminism has a simple definition. It's the belief in social, economic, and political equality for the sexes. Equality for all genders, colors, and nationalities. No men, no women, just human beings. It's been over 100 years since the early feminists came up with such a radical notion. All we can hope is that it won't take another 100 years to achieve.